Hey, what's up? John Sonmez from SimpleProgrammer.com. So I've gotten a few different questions around this. I just got this email that had a few questions in it. I'm just going to answer one of the questions. If you send me a really long email, you'll probably get one of the questions answered. It's best to send me a shorter email if you are sending me a question. Try to summarize. So especially if I read the email, then that's easy for me to read it on camera. But anyway, so this question had within it what I thought was a really good question, which is basically how to deal with failure. So I think a lot of people struggle with dealing with failure. And learning how to deal with failure, or what to do with it, is a really important skill in succeeding in life in general, in your career, in business, in pretty much anything that you do. So I think it's really important to take some time and to talk about the idea of dealing with failure and how you should respond. So first of all, I think it comes down to having a good mindset about this, right? Failure, so a lot of people think of failure with a capital F. That's when you actually fail and it's done, right? But failure with the lowercase f, right, the small failure, that's not a big deal. In fact, it's progress towards a goal, right? So I've talked about being afraid of failure, and I think that's the first step is that you can't be afraid of failure, right? You gotta, because failure is what brings you forward, right? I mean, let's say that you wanted to learn how to juggle, right? I like to use this example because you have to fail a lot to juggle. There's no way, if you're going to try and juggle, throw 3 balls up in the air, you have to expect that you're going to fail the first time, the first probably 500 times, maybe 1,000 times, and then you'll learn it. So failure is part of the pathway to success. You can't skip failure in that case. Now, in most things in life, that's true. We just don't see it that way, right? We tend to we tend to think that we tend to forget about the failures along the way or minimize those, which is sort of the attitude that we want to have in general, right? So when you're doing something, right, you have to be ready to fail. In fact, I don't want to say that you should set yourself up for failure, but you should expect to fail. I did a video on expecting to suck, on wanting to suck in order to get better, and it's a similar concept, right? When you have something that you're trying to pursue, you have to have the proper mindset that you're ready to face failure head on, and if you do happen to fail, that is part of the progress, right? This all comes back to this whole idea of trusting the process and not focusing on the results and knowing and enjoying the journey, right? It's not the destination, it's the journey. So that's how you deal with failure. So when you're in a situation where you face failure and you realize that is failure, this is a turning point in your life. This is a testing point. So what you do here is going to determine whether you advance or repeat the grade, right? So when you advance past failure is when you learn from it and you're willing to accept it and move on. When you repeat the grade is when you deny it, when you make excuses, when you try to blame other people. So the best way to deal with failure is to accept it, to embrace it, to look back retrospectively on it and see where you can improve and plan the next step, right? I just went to a Charlie Brown movie with my daughter, like a matinee, that Peanuts, what's it called? The Peanuts, yeah, Peanuts, that's it, right? So anyway, Charlie Brown is a great example of this, right? That dude, he basically fails all the time. He's just fail. But he doesn't give up, right? Charlie Brown, the thing we love about Charlie Brown is the world is against him, right? But he doesn't give up. He might get discouraged from time to time, but he just keeps on trying. He keeps trying to kick that football. He keeps trying to fly that kite, right? He keeps trying. And that's the key. That's the thing. That you got to see failure, right, as not the end. So many people see it as the end, and that's not it. Because if every time you fail, you end your journey, you're not going to have a very long journey, and you're not going to be good. You're never going to succeed at much at all in life. You're only going to do things that you're good at and that have no chance of failure, right? As soon as you hit failure and you call that a dead end, you're not going to get anywhere. So the best way to deal with failure is to accept it, to expect it to some degree, right? You're gonna face failures, and to realize that it's a good thing, that it is something that is going to advance you on your way. You've just figured out one thing that doesn't work. You figured out, and you've gained experience. And if you can have that mindset, then what's going to happen is that failure is going to propel you forward. And one exercise I'll leave you with here to deal with failure and sort of to learn to overcome it and to go beyond it is basically this. So a lot of times I'll advise people to basically think about someone else going through the thing that they're doing, right? And how those failures are going to result in success. So a lot of times when we're trying to do something and we hit failure, let's say, I'll give a good common one here that I think a lot of you are probably interested in, because it's real difficult because you're going to face failure down this path, is let's say you want to become an entrepreneur. Let's say you want to build a business online, or you want to make money, right? Build your own business. You're going to face a lot of failure along the way because there's a lot of stuff to figure out. There's a lot of things that don't work, right? So a lot of times you could start out doing that, or let's say learning a programming language. Again, lots of failure along the way. And you might think, gosh, I just can't do it. I'm never going to get to where I want to be. You have this vision of where you want to be, where you're successful, and you just see that you're going to fail and fail. So so the exercise is to then imagine someone else in that exact scenario, right? Can you imagine someone else who is trying to become an entrepreneur, or who is trying to learn a programming language? And can you imagine them trying 100 times? Or devoting 2 hours a day of practice, or trying and trying again and hitting failures. And when you imagine someone else, you see that, let's say that they're trying to learn a programming language and they devote like an hour and a half or 2 hours a day each day to practicing on that programming language, or building a business, or working towards that business and becoming an entrepreneur. Do you think that in 2 years they will probably succeed? Yes. So you can see that, right? When you imagine someone else, the same applies for you, right? I mean, why are you any different? You can accomplish the same thing. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just imagine someone else. I'll try to step outside myself and say, look, okay, someone else can do this, right? If for example, I'm trying to think of a good example of something that I thought was really, really hard that I couldn't do. Probably writing well, like writing blog posts, right? Because at first I just sucked at writing so bad, and then I imagined that other people got good at this from doing it a lot, or writing a book, right? How I wrote my soft skills book, right? So I was able to envision that and say, okay, if someone dedicated their time, if they spent every single day, if they're writing about 1,000 words a day, eventually they're going to get good at writing. If they're going to be at least passable, and that helped propel me forward, because then I kept thinking about how I was going to do that. In fact, I got another example, just recent, is I was learning to type properly. Right, I've been always typing with like 3 fingers. I could type like 60 words a minute or 70 words a minute with 3 fingers, but it's not very efficient. So I was like, oh, how am I going to learn how to? It seemed so hard. And then I remembered that other people are doing this, and that if I put someone else on a program of them practicing for half an hour a day of typing properly, in 4 weeks they would be typing properly, obviously. So anyone can do it. And then it clicked over for me. Well, obviously you could do it, John. So I did that for 30 minutes a day. It took me about 2 weeks, and then I can type properly. So anyway, things look hard. Especially when you're facing failure, and you're gonna face failure a lot. But the way to deal with failure is to just expect it, to overcome it, to keep going, right? And to try and learn from it, right? Failure is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. In fact, you know, I'll leave one last point here because I know I've been taking these videos a little bit long, but there's so much to say around this topic. Anyway, my one last point is this. Sometimes failure, and I'm not saying this in a, silver lining type of way, right? But sometimes failure is a blessing, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of times when you succeed the first time you try to do something, you do it wrong and you don't learn and you don't know, right? There's actually a good book on this. It's called, hold on a second, How I Lost $1 Million, okay? Good book. Read that book or listen to the audio version. Audio version is pretty good. And that will, you'll get what I'm saying here. But essentially it works like this because, you know, if you have success and the success is not due to doing things correctly, right? Then what ends up, you're setting yourself up for a bigger failure later on because you got rewarded for doing the wrong thing. So when you do the wrong thing, you want failure. You don't want to get lucky and get success when you do the wrong thing because that's not going to help you in the long run. It's going to hurt you. So sometimes failures are a blessing. And in the poker table, right? I use a lot of poker examples, but this is a lesson you learn from playing poker: is that you don't want to get rewarded for betting on getting two pair or getting trips when you have a pair, right? Making bad bets. You don't want to get rewarded because when you do, it reinforces that bad play, and then you're going to get smacked down later on. So that's the way to deal with failure, is to understand it, to recognize it's part of the way, part of the path. That's not a bad thing, and everyone has to face it. So the faster that you learn this lesson in life, the faster you're going to succeed, because then nothing can stop you. All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you like these videos, definitely subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.